Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all of you who are present to the this AI bootcamp that we are running in partnership with Google. Uh, I'd like to just quickly get started with the hands-on session itself. Just a few things I want to share is that this AI Builders Lab initiative has been started to empower students with the power of Gen AI, and I hope by the time this session concludes, by the time this session ends, the folks who have joined us, right, will take away certain new things, right? If you're a beginner in the landscape of AI, maybe you would have learned something else. If you're already experienced with AI, right, you have already made certain projects with AI, Gen AI, then you would have learned about a certain new tool or a certain new thing. So I just hope that this session is something for everyone joining, right? Something fruitful comes out of it. So let's just quickly get started, right? Yeah. So the AI Builders Lab initiative, right, is basically, as you can see, it's presented by Google for Developers in partnership with Hack2skill, right? And why actually we are doing this is that Google has launched this, service or a tool called Google AI Studio, which is available for everyone to be used and to leverage the power of Gen AI, the power of Gemini for their own personal use for their softwares. And they've made it such a seamless and easy tool to use, right? That anyone, even with the most basic and rudimentary understanding of what AI is, how AI is supposed to work, can do it and follow it, right? So before we get started with the session, right, I just quickly want you guys to, for everyone who's joined, we can circle back to this as well. I just quickly want you guys, to scan this QR code and generate the API key. So I'll let you know what the structure of this whole session is, and then accordingly we'll proceed. So you would need to scan this QR code or go to this bit.ly link, right? And once you're done that, you will be asked certain questions like develop in your own environment. You have to click on get API key. Then you have to fill in the consent form that's been provided. Once that is done, you can click on continue. Finally, when you're on the dashboard, you need to click on the create API key button. Then it'll show another pop-up. You have to click on got it. Then finally, this step, when you can do create new API key in the project, your API key will be generated and it will start showing up in the table here. So once you're done with the whole process, right? I'll quickly screen here again. Once you're done with the whole process, we request you to take a screenshot of the table, not of your API key, but of the table that is down below, and then submit to a Google form, which we will circulate towards the end of this whole session as a proof that you have done it. And once this whole session is concluded, and for everyone who participates in this session and then leverages Google AI Studio and shares the screenshots with us, we'll be able to verify and validate their submissions, and they'll be eligible to get the certificate for this session as well. So I hope we have a very great learning experience. So while everyone is scanning this QR code and setting things up, I'd just quickly like to take if anyone has any questions or things like that, right? And in the meantime, I think we can wait till 5:12. In the meantime, I'll keep on answering certain questions. If you can start putting in your questions in the comment. And around 5:12ish, we'll start with the hands-on session. Till then, everyone else can start generating their API keys as well. In case you're facing any issues in that, feel free to ping such issues in the chat as well, right? So I'll just quickly go through the comments that are coming in and see if there are any questions or queries that you guys have, and feel free to ask certain things as well if required. Okay, so I got one comment saying that I want to build a language NLP training model, right? So thanks for the comment. So I'd like to tell you is that how these modern Gen AI tools work. versus how traditionally NLP worked is very different, right? NLP used to be a very structured process of training a chatbot, wherein every prompt was very carefully, you know, created. Every data was very carefully cleaned, and then on basis of that, we trained a model. Whereas with how Gen AI works, I'm sure you must have heard about RAGs, right? RAGs. So it's sort of like a black box in terms of what the outcome can be, right? But yeah, you'll see that you can build something very close to an NLP model using this Gen AI tool itself. So, Nikhil Mankani, you asked the task that we'll be doing. So I'll tell you, Nikhil, that's a very great question. Will it be under free tier or not? So what happened is that when these Gen AI tools started coming, right? So the very first Gen AI tool that Google has, which is for enterprise level, is called Vertex, and Vertex is a completely paid tool. But then Google also came up with this tool called Google, AI Studio, which is completely free to use. So it does not matter, right? Throughout the whole API process, you will see that not in even in single place you had to enter any payment information, any credit card, any debit card, or anything like that. It's a completely free process, and you'll be able to generate these API keys completely free as well, right? Okay. Uh, any other questions? Any other queries? Okay, which table should we take the screenshot of? I'll quickly show you that as well, right? So once you have generated an API key, right, it will look something like this, right? This table you can see which is loading here. Basically, this is the table that will be containing all the information of your API keys, right? It contains the API key that I have generated. So in desktop view, it looks like this. And in mobile view, it will look something like this. The last 4 digits of your API key or 5 digits of your API key will come. So you basically need to take a screenshot of this particular part. The table should be very visible in the screenshot. And then later on, we'll share a form in which you can then upload this as well. Okay, I hope that would have answered your query. I am just flashing the table for a second so that you guys who had questions related to that can, uh, fix that as and then quickly flash back again to the QR screen. Okay, guys. So just one more minute we'll spend, setting you guys up. Then throughout the whole journey, you can we'll keep floating this link, right? This in the chat, and you guys can keep registering, generating APIs. And towards the later half of the session, I'll share the form links with you as well. And then you can start uploading the proof that you have signed up. And in between, we'll go through a learning journey of what Google AI Studio is, how it is different from plain old Gemini that we use. And from that point on, we'll build our understanding at a deeper level, right? So it's almost 5:12. It's in fact it's dot 5:12. So let me just start by asking in the chat a quick yes or no would suffice. How many of you have used an LLM tool like Gemini or Chat GPT or anything of similar kind, right? Can you, if I'm sure a lot of you must have used the tool, right? Gemini is very popular. Chat GPT is very popular. So what happens is, and there's a comparison that I'd like to show you is that whenever we are using Gemini, right, you'll see that all we can do is enter and talk to it here, and at max, we can, upload an image here. That is it. There is nothing much we can do with Gemini, but this is where Google AI Studio comes in. So Google AI Studio is their developer-centric, platform for integrating Gemini. So as soon as you generate your API key and you land here on the AI Studio prompt, you can click on create new prompt and you will be taken here. Now here itself, you'll start observing that it is very, very different from normal Gemini. Just like normal Gemini, I can also ask it questions like write code for printing odd numbers, right? And it works like Gemini exact same, but you'll see there are a lot of other things as well. There's some certain thing called the system instruction, token count, temperature, and a lot of other things as well. So I'll just quickly walk you through all of those things. So the very first thing is that whenever we are talking or conversing with an LLM model, we always need to provide it certain instructions each and every time. Like for example, if you're asking for a explanation or a blog, so we write it as if you're a marketing expert, or write it in such a way that even uh, very young audience can easily understand, or certain other things like that. But each and every time with every new prompt, we need to set up how Gemini has to respond. We have to continuously tell Gemini how Gemini should respond, what its persona should be. But what system instructions help us do is that if I set a persona for Gemini here, I can just say respond in a way that 7 to 10-year-old kids also understand. And then I am asking it to explain algebra. So now Gemini will always take into mind that it's explaining all the responses to a 7 or 10-year-old. So you can see that it's giving example of box of toys and explaining it in terms which a younger audience might be easily able to understand. So it is that easy to set up a persona, set up a outline for Gemini, and this way we can easily get more targeted and well-meaning prompts from Gemini. But this is not where its capabilities and power stop. As you must have noticed in normal Gemini, right? We were only able to share images, right? But what this lets us do is that we can even upload audio and video files as well. So I'll just give an example. This is their sample media that they already have provided. So I'll pick one, I'll add it to the prompt, and I'll say count how many times a dino skeleton shows in the video, right? And if I'll run it, it will take some time. It will maybe take some 20-30 seconds, but it will precisely be able to process the whole video, and tell us exactly how many times uh, a dinosaur skeleton had shown up, because this is a tour of the American Natural Museum of History. So it says there are 11 dinosaur skeletons in the video, right? So we can ask it to parse videos. I can also ask it to record and process audio. So for example, I'll just show you a quick demo. What is 2 plus 2? I can add it to the prompt, and now I will not ask it to answer. I will just ask it to say what was said in the audio file, right? And I'm just waiting for it to load. And in the time it loads, if it's extracting it, and in the time it loads, if I now run it, I did not ask for answer to the question, but you will see that it will take some time to process it. And after some time, it'll just, spit out the answer. So now imagine how easy it is that using a tool like Gemini, right? It said what is 2 plus 2. So how easy it is with a tool like Gemini, to monitor and, train on phishing calls that people get. And we can train how easily we can train a model on certain keywords, like people who call and ask for OTPs, Aadhaar numbers, and other things like that. We can easily train a model. Earlier, we would have had to spend so much time gathering data, so much time figuring out how to process the audio. But with the advent of LLMs, that whole process has been made really, really simple. So I've told you what all can be done in Gemini and the system instructions. Let's quickly switch, focus to the the right side bar that we have here. So the very first thing that we can do is that by default, when we are here in Gemini, for free tier, we can only use this Gemini Flash. We cannot use Gemini Pro. But with Google AI Studio, we get access to both Gemini Pro and Gemini Flash within our own environment. So we don't need to, pay the additional premium fees, and we can actually, I've been using Gemini Pro for this whole demo as well. And Gemini Flash, anyhow, we have access to, right? So we can change the model that we want. And the very next thing, this is the token count. So I'll explain what token is. So like how you and I talk when we are talking in English, right? The most basic unit that we talk in is called a word. So we can say the sentence that I'm speaking in is made up of 5 words, 6 words, or in tests we often write the answer in 50 to 100 words. So in a similar vein, LLMs and all of these AI related things always break everything up into token. So the currency or the medium in which they calculate how much data they have processed is by breaking things down into tokens and then processing those tokens. So this video that I uploaded took 88,501 tokens, and processing this audio took 129 tokens. Once these 2 million tokens are up, I need to refresh to reset. So at max, I can only process using Google AI Studio any content, any file that is up to 2 million tokens in size. Once that limit has been reached, I would need to refresh or create a new session, right? Moving on, this thing called temperature, right? So the most easiest way, like if you will hover on it, right, it will say creativity allowed in the responses. But what does that mean? So I want to basically shed some light on how actually, LLMs work, how actually AI works. So behind the scenes, it's all, plain maths, right? There's no, fancy thing going on there. It's plain maths, right? So let's take example that I give Gemini a prompt saying, uh, create a story based around, a city scenario. And it starts writing that there's a man walking down a road and he reaches a traffic signal. So now the most likely thing that a person can see on a traffic signal is, let's say, maybe a car, a bike, or something similar to that, right? So the probability of the things that are more likely to show up will then be selected by Gemini to create the further story, the further sentence. But by increasing the temperature, what we ensure is that certain things that Gemini might have, produced, the model might have produced, which have a lower probability of getting selected. For example, maybe some animal, right? Maybe a dog or a cat. Those things, those outcomes can also now be selected. So by increasing the temperature, we increase the probability of selecting outputs that were less likely to be selected by Gemini. And by decreasing the temperature, we make it more objective. So if a temperature is 0, then Gemini will only select the outcomes which have the highest probability. And if we increase the temperature, it will only select, it can select anything. So it becomes, more random. So if we want to increase the randomness of the responses, we want the responses to be more creative, we can increase the temperature, and conversely, we can decrease. Now, this feature again is something which is not, available in normal Gemini. If you go in normal Gemini, you will not be able to increase or decrease the temperature. By default, the temperature is set to 1. So that is another, feature that we have in addition to, the normal Gemini that we are experienced using, right? Anyways, moving on, then you'll find these certain things called tools. So JSON mode is pretty self-explanatory, that instead of getting the output in this version, in text version, I can get the output in JSON, just in case I want to feed this output to some program or something like that. Then code execution is that whatever code is being generated, if I want that code to be executed in a sandboxed environment. So if I write a code of, generating an odd number, right, like I did in the beginning, that code can then be executed within the Gemini environment as well. So it gives us compiler level access as well, right? It also acts as a compiler. And the most interesting feature is called function calling. Why this function calling feature is interesting, I'll explain. So let me just ask, what is the weather in Mumbai to Gemini? So if I'm asking Gemini, anything about real-time data, Gemini won't be able to answer, because Gemini will straight up say that Gemini does not have access to, any real-time data, and those things cannot be accessed by it. It's taking a lot of time, right? And it basically say, yes, that I do not have access to real-time information. So similarly, right, imagine that if you, any real-time information you have, information related to stock prices, information related to weather, or maybe you have some IoT related APIs as well, anything related to real-time data, now through function calling, basically I'll just enable and show you what happens is, if you can try an example, we can basically, embed our own function calls, our custom function calls, our custom APIs. So if I, in my program, have a API to get the weather details, I can use that and I can embed that here in Gemini, and Gemini will use that function to fetch the weather data and include it in its response. And that this increases the possibility by so much, because imagine, right, if you have a IoT system, right, if you have built maybe a smart home system, now that smart, if you are able to, you must have registered that smart home system on some cloud platform. So if you generate an API key for it and you create certain functions like turn on light, turn off light, You can essentially replace the smart home devices like Google Home, Alexa that are in your house, and completely control everything using Gemini. So you can build a whole home automation system controlled by Gemini, controlled by Gen AI through this function calling method. If you want to look more into it, it's a slightly advanced topic, as it requires making your own middleware, making your own APIs. You can always refer to developer documentation. I'll just very quickly go over that as well, so that you are very familiar and acquainted with how things are done, right? So in the time it's loading, I'll quickly move on to this thing called advanced settings. So another thing that you can do is, like, by default, Gemini comes with certain advanced settings pre-configured. So it has certain filters against the harassment, hate speech, the sexually explicit or dangerous content that it can use. So I'll give you an example. So if I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but there's this chef very popular in US and UK called Gordon Ramsay. So if I ask, if I give it a system instruction that you are Gordon Ramsay, right, and I ask Gemini how to cook, right, it will. So Gordon Ramsay, as a chef, he is known that he curses a lot when he speaks. He's in a lot of shows and he curses a lot. So you'll say a warning is shown here, and it says that content not permitted, and I can edit the safety settings, and then Gemini will start responding in the same way Gordon Ramsay does, right? So this is how you can even toggle such settings as well within your prompt. The final things, I'll switch back this top p, top k, stop sequence, and output length. I'll switch back to them later when I'm explaining certain other things. Currently, let's quickly get an overview of this API developer document. So in function calling, you'll, for those of you who are familiar with working on backend code, who have made their own APIs, middlewares, you'll be easily able to find out how to write function declarations within Gemini, what are the best practices, how function calling is made, how you can do conditional function calling, and how you can send requests and everything from Gemini as well, right? So any place you're stuck, any place you want to explore, this documentation is so well made that you'll always have a nice time, exploring things in and around related to AI Studio. Anyways, quickly coming back to AI Studio. So I've till now, shown you all the features that AI Studio has over normal Gemini, right? But why would you use it? And till now, I've not shown what the actual use of generating this API was, right? I told you that we will generate this API key and we will use it, right? But where am I using this API key? What is the use of this API key? So any chat that I'm having with Gemini, right? Any chat that I'm having with Gemini, how many days are in a week? For example, let's just quickly, right? And I'll give it a persona. You are a trivia master, right? How many leap? Who was the second president of India, right? So I've given it a persona and I'm just chatting to it that it's a trivia master, right? So now what Gemini allows us to do, and this is one of the most powerful features, is this thing called get code. As soon as I click on it, whatever persona I have given it, that you are a trivia master, whatever settings I've configured on the right hand side, all of these will be saved, and I can import the code in Python if I want to work on conventional AI libraries and do fast prototyping. I can export it to JavaScript, and then I can embed this code directly into front end if I want. And if I am working with a backend JavaScript framework like Node.js, or maybe a TypeScript framework like Dino.js, right, I can integrate this code there as well. Then it also provides Dart integration, so you can integrate it into cross-platform apps. It also has Swift and Kotlin support, so you can even integrate this code into native Android and native Swift apps as well. And finally, Go, a very popular language for making robust backend services. So you can import the code of any chat session, essentially, that you have done. So you will have very quick access to Gemini in your code by just following 3, 4, 5 very easy steps. And I'll quickly show you how you can validate and see what your code is doing, how it's working within the Gemini environment as well. So there's this thing called prompt gallery in which already pre-made prompts are there. So I'll take example of the math tutor prompt. So as soon as I load it up, you will see that it's already there's certain conversations already been had here. If I click on get code, I can get the code in any of these formats I want, but what I want to show you is how to quickly test what the code that we have written, is it working or not. So Google also provides support for this thing called Google Colab. So any of you who's already an enthusiast, right, and has worked on Python before, would be aware that there's this thing called Jupyter Notebooks. So Google Colab is the cloud version of that same software. So as soon as I click on Google Colab, you'll see that I have gotten the whole code, access to the whole code that is required to run Gemini instantly. And all I need to do is I need to put my API key here. So this is the API key that I have. I need to put it here, give it a name, and I can start using Gemini within my code, right? So you'll see that similar to Jupyter Notebook, I need to just run each cell, and once each of the cell is run, right? It's taking some time. Once each of the cell is run, you'll see that I'll just quickly show you as well. So it also helps us create backup data as well. So I'm setting it up in G Drive, and each step has been so firstly it tells us what library we need to import. Then it imports all of those libraries for us. Then for storing any data that it might generate, right? It also mounts to Google Drive, our own Google Drive, so that it can store all the data there. Then the API key that we have generated, we need to use that API key here. So we do that. Finally, here we are providing it all the arguments that you mentioned here, right? Which I showed you, like token count, temperature, JSON mode, all of these things. All of these things we are providing it here. So you can print these things as well here, like the GIS content is basically all the chat related content that is there. Then generation of config file, safety settings. Now, if you want to show the conversation, it's optional. You can show that as well. Now, finally, everything that you have done, right? All the files that you have, you want to, back them up and place them somewhere so that Google AI Studio can actually make the have access to it and Gemini can access it. So we need to upload those files, and once done, you can see the contents of it here. So this is the file that was uploaded on our Google Drive as I had connected my Google Drive, and now I can finally generate the content either here or through chat. So since chatting is the most popular option, and someone asked about an LLM as well, right? And how NLP works, right? So now that I've run all of these commands, if I want to start talking to Gemini, I can just say how to get roots of x square plus 3, and I can just run this command, and you'll see that Gemini will respond. It'll take some time and it'll respond here itself. So it is that easy, right? You see, and here. So I can keep on adding new cells and Gemini will keep on responding. Now, if I don't want to keep on adding new cells, I can just put this thing in a while loop, and I have my own personal chatbot ready within minutes. So all I had to do was chat with Gemini, click on get code, open it in Colab, run everything, put my API key here, and within 5 minutes, I have a personalized chatbot ready to be integrated in any application I want. Right? So for those of you who have joined, I'm just quickly flashing back to this screen. I'll just quickly show you how what I'll basically do is I've shown it in Google Colab environment, right? I'll show how it looks like in VS Code as well, just in case you people are still curious. So just let me quickly copy the Python code for it as well. So I copied the Python code, and I'm just flashing the screen. I'll quickly just have pull up my VS Code and share that with you as well. How we can integrate this in VS Code as well, because I am pretty sure a lot of you now know that we can do it in Google Colab, but how we can locally, if you want to create programs out of it, you want to create code out of it, how you can do that, that is also possible, and it's not a very tough thing to do, right? So yeah, right. So here you'll see that the same code that was present in the browser, right? This whole code, I've taken it and I've pasted it here, right? This whole code, I've pasted it here. The only thing that I've done is I've created a new file called constants.py. And in this file, I've stored my API key and I've imported the API key here. One thing I want you all to be very careful of is that since this is a free to use program, it does not matter how your API key is used, but it is a golden rule that you should never, publicly tell anyone what your API key is or share your API key with anyone. API key should never be pushed, to your GitHub repos as well, and it should always be kept private in files like constants.py or env files or any other format that you want to store, but never store them or push them to your GitHub repository or share them with your friends or anything like that. That's why in the screenshot as well that we requested, you will see that we are not asking you to share the screenshot of the API key, but of the table in which only the last 4 digits are, so that your API key is never revealed. Now, anyhow, I've pasted it. And like how I told you that I can write a while loop here, I've written a very simple while loop. And if I run this program, you'll see that I have a chatbot now running within my system itself. So I can start talking to it. What is a discriminant in matrices? Right? I'll ask it and you'll see it'll take some time and it answered. You are thinking of a discriminant in context of quadratic equations, not matrices. There is no direct concept. So since it was talking in context of quadratic equations, it answered my question. Okay, what about roots? And it will keep on answering. So now I'm able to, talk to, I have a mathematical chatbot within my code base in less than 10 minutes. I made that chatbot, I tested it in Google Colab, it was working. I copy pasted the code, put it here, and now I have a chatbot. So imagine how easy it will be for you guys, to make projects. So there's this one project I had made. I'll quickly like to show you called WordCraft. It is also there in the Google documentation as well as a sample project. So I made this project and made few changes to it as well. So as soon as the project is run, I've basically been able to integrate Gemini to create a mystery story about giant dragons, and I can start and it will keep on creating the story. So all I did was I started talking to Gemini. I created few prompts. I imported the code into JavaScript and I had everything ready. So it has already created certain things. Now I can choose something. I can add multiple things. I can rewrite it and I can also chat with Gemini here itself. So see, right? It gave me the prompt that the dragons were considered a legend, but now I can choose which prompt I want to go with. So I want to go with this and I choose. Now tell me what happens next. So I can, and it will keep on generating the story, sentence by sentence, word by word. And this is such a simple and easy project, but it's such a fun project to make. So this is just another example that I wanted to show, right? Wherein I've basically done this. So you can quickly scan, generate your API key, and you can also make certain such projects using, GenAI very easily. Just give me a moment. Yeah, I'll quickly present again. Yeah. Anyhow, quickly coming back to our AI studio. So you guys must have seen, right, that I've explained you this, but there's this whole menu here as well, and there's a lot to learn from here too. So I'll quickly go here. So we know what create prompt is, we know what get API is, we know what prompt gallery is. My library basically stores all the prompts that if I save a copy of this prompt, it will be stored here. But there is this thing called new tuned model. So not only does Gemini allow us to create these chatbots very quickly, and integrate Gemini very easily in our program, but it also provides us an interface, a system to fine tune our models. But before we understand how and what fine tuning a model is, we need to understand that there are two types of prompts. So, currently how we talk to Gemini, this is called free prompting or chat prompting, right? Basically, I'm talking, what is the capital of India? Why it is called free from prompting? Because I can ask Gemini anything and the conversation can go anywhere. But Gemini also offers another thing called structured prompting. So what structured prompting is it's more, familiar, or those who have done AI will be able to relate to it more. Structured prompting is basically where we want there to be a direct correlation between a given input and a given output. We can have multiple inputs as well, and we can have multiple outputs as well for certain things, but that feature is not supported here. It's supported in the enterprise. So you'll see Gemini API for enterprise. If I click on it, it takes me to Google Vertex. As I told you, Vertex is the paid service, right? It'll load in a moment. So Vertex is the paid service, right? And so it's giving me $300 credits, and then it'll ask me to, set up certain. But this Google AI Studio is completely free of cost. So coming back to the topic of structured prompting. So what I've done is a very simple thing. For any given two words, the output is always a poem, like roses are red type of poem, basically, right? So for cat and rat, it's another roses are red poem. And even if it's a single word, still the output is roses are red poem. So normally, if I would to input this and go to Gemini and put it here, Gemini would not know what to do with it. Gemini would just, give some random response. But what structured prompting allows me to do, that just by providing 4 examples, now any 2 words that I enter here, bat and mat, for example, and I run it, the output will always be a roses are red poem. So I was able to directly create a correlation between what type of input I'm getting and what type of output I'm giving. And I can even, provide it certain tone that you are making content for an Instagram page, marketing page, right? And now it has a persona as well that it is working with, and structured prompting. And this structured prompt itself, once you save it, you can go to fine tuning your model, and you can start, it tuning that model as well, that how much you want to tune it and what exactly we are tuning. I'll also give. So I'll just take one structured prompt I've created, right? And I'll click on tune. So what actually happens is that if we quickly go back here, so there were these certain things called, top K and top P. These parameters are you, and for those of you who would have worked in AI, would have heard of the term called hyperparameter tuning, right? So we need to adjust this top K and top P basically to, create proper samples, manipulate what type of outputs the Gemini model is actually getting, and what sort of responses are available to it. So the temperature that is adjusted is actually based on top K and top P parameters. So what this actually takes care of is that, see, I started tuning a model and it's saying the model tuning is in process. So it will fine tune the model by itself, and it will, automatically set the top K and top P parameter to the best possible value for the model that I'm trying to create, so that it can function properly. And then I can add this model to my API key and start using it in my code. So I can create my own custom structured prompt model and start using that in my API key as well. It's taking some time. It says in progress. It will take maybe 2 or 3 minutes. And it was done in less than 1 minute because there were very few entries. And you can see that the closer it gets to the bottom line, the more fine-tuned the model is basically. Right? So we can see that somewhere around here, we can stop our training, and maybe then in future we can, use this model in our API key if we want, or use it in the chat also if we want. So this was, very, very brief overview of what Google AI Studio is, how you can use it in your code in Google Colab or maybe VS Code if you want, and how it is much, much more powerful than Gemini that we actually have. So even if you are not, fully comfortable developing software on your own, you can still generate an API key and do fun things around here in Google Colab. And once you are more confident, you can start creating, your own websites like WordCraft, or even more complex projects, the IoT projects. You can embed function calling and do much, much more, right? So since now we have only 15 minutes left, I'm again just flashing the screen. Those of you who have not generated an API key can scan this QR code or go to this link. And for everyone who has generated the API key, I request you all to scan this QR code, right? And a form will open, and submit the screenshot that you have taken of the API key and share it with us so that we can confirm your registration and accordingly, give you and distribute the certificates as well. So with this, I've mostly covered everything, right? That is there. If there are any questions, I can take those up as well. And with this, we have basically come to the conclusion of the whole bootcamp. I hope it was a good learning experience for everyone who joined, and I hope this will help you, ease into the journey of AI that you all want to do. Right, for people who are new to AI, hope this gives you the confidence, and those who already have, a lot of experience in AI, hope this gives you. So you might want to use tools like Vertex AI or more advanced tools, but those tools are paid, right? So before using those tools, before using the $300 credits, you can experiment fully with Google AI Studio, get a proper understanding so that you can make the best use out of the 300 credits that you get to use, tools like Vertex AI and so on. So I hope everyone had certain learning. Okay, Urvashi, you're getting an error saying list models failed. Okay, Nikhil says what happens when tokens are exhausted. Okay, Nikhil, I'll show that as well, right? So you'll see, right? As soon as if I give it a prompt, a very huge prompt, I'll pick up something from sample media and I'll give it this 44 minutes long movie, add to prompt, give a gist of this. So while it's extracting, right, I'll get back to this, right, and we can explore it further. So you will see what happens. But one thing you might have noticed that it takes 700,000 tokens. So I can run it and I'll upload it again a few more times, let it process. But you would have noticed that it was reset to zero. So every time I go to a new prompt, it is reset to zero. So there is never any limitation. I can process a 30-minute long, 40-minute long movie very easily without passing the 2 million token limit. So I can build very, very complex applications too that I want. And with each fresh API call, with each fresh instant of a chat, right, this token count is reset. So we don't need to worry about that as well, right? Anyways, yeah, back to here. Any other questions? Okay, Nikhil, how would that be done by code? So how you are creating, an instance of a chat, how a chat instance is spawning, you'll see, right, that we create a model here, right? We create a Gemini model and then we are chatting with that Gemini. So this model has a limit of 2 million tokens. So every time that limit is hit, I need to create and spawn a new instance. So I can call it Gemini 1, Gemini 2, and I can keep on spawning new instances. I can add a check that once that limit is hit, I need to spawn a new instance and I need to continue working with that new instance. Right? You can see that while creating a chat, we are passing the model name, everything here. So this is where the whole content and the 2 million limit starts being applicable. Okay. Urvashi, can you, if you're continuing to face this issue, I'd request you to reach out to, support. And maybe what we'll do is we'll share the PPT with you as well over that same email. And hopefully that will help you solve the issue, right? Because I'm not sure, I've never encountered this issue. It seems to be something new. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. So Gaurav, I showed you, right, very quickly, right, because the crowd is very mixed, right. So showing a full-fledged example of how a certain project is built would be, very good for people who are very familiar with hands-on coding. But I showed you how I copied that mathematical, code and copy pasted in my environment, and with just minor changes, adding a while loop, I was able to get a prompt running within my VS Code environment very easily. So this is just a starting point for you to experiment, right? All you need to do is get that API key, create an instance of Gemini, and from there you'll be able to proceed further and do anything that you want. Okay. Yeah. So okay, Demon King saying Gemini AI gives the problem that it can't identify images. No, that it can actually. I'll just show you. If it can process the video, right, it can also process images. So I'll just show you. In sample media, I'll just show you an example. I'll upload this. What is in this image? And if I run it, you'll see that it is able to process. It'll take some time. And the best part is that I can import this whole thing in any language that I want, right? Python, and I can embed it into VS Code. For those of you who are asking, right, about the project, you can embed it directly into VS Code, put in your API key, and start working with it, right? So I've used the Gemini Pro model, and you'll see it'll take some 30-40 seconds because it's an image. It takes a lot of time to parse that image, and then it'll be able to tell you the response that this image features a cute baby. See, it was able to tell. So it's a very powerful tool, right? And you can not only process images, you can process videos, audio, anything, and then all you need to do is click on get code, and you can extract the code and put it in your VS Code environment, your Google Colab environment, and from there it's very easy to start coding with it. So any existing application you have. Yeah, so someone say chat GPT does not take too much time. Yeah, you're so actually there are multiple types of model. The model I'm using, you'll notice, is called Gemini Pro. So there are two models actually, Gemini Pro and Gemini Flash. Gemini Pro is their ultimate model, which is trained on a lot more parameters. So that's why it is taking so much time to process the image. If I use Gemini Flash instead, it will give the output very fast, but it will not have used as many parameters to give that same output. So you can always fine tune between when to use Gemini Pro and when to use Gemini Flash as well within your program. Okay, so top P and top K. Okay, this is the last question that I'll take, and then we can conclude the session. So top P and top K, what they are basically. So if you understood the concept of temperature, right? So the top P parameter is basically used to assign those probabilities to the prompts in this temperature. So if we change the top P parameter, it will change how those probability values are being assigned to the samples that are being created. And then top K is even one layer below, wherein if we change the top K parameter, it will change how the possible futures. So imagine that the AI is walking and it has option to choose between 4 or 5 futures. So what those 4 or 5 futures can potentially be are affected by top K parameter. What goes into what probability is assigned to those 4 or 5 futures is assigned to is on basis of the top P parameter. And finally, by setting the temperature, we let the model know which future can it pick or cannot pick, and that is how the model works, right? uh, and I hope that that would have answered your question, right? And with this, I think we can conclude the session. I just thank you everyone for joining, and I'll towards the end I'll just quickly flash the link for submitting your responses as well. And I just wish you all the best of luck for your journey in the world of AI. Thank you.